My D-Gens. I love anime girls. Welcome back to your girl, Yuzuha. Lots and lots of things to cover today, so let's go team. Now, I do want to start off with what I think is probably the most important thing to cover today, and it's about her gear, her disc set. Let me just go through it really quick and then drop the huge caveat. And it's, well, you see 4-piece swing jazz, 2-piece Python. I'm not a fan of this. Swing jazz, chain attack, and ultimates, they just take way too long to get. This buff is pretty much non-existent, especially in an anomaly team, which normally doesn't run a stun unless you're running trigger. So you're barely ever going to proc this thing. Now, today, I would recommend you run 4-piece Astral Voice because first of all, it gives attack, which does help you get your buff. But on top of that, the buffs, the damage buffs are actually based on quick assists, and Yuzuha has a lot of quick assists. So for the majority of most fights, you're going to be maintaining between 1 to 2 and possibly 3. I would say it's probably about 1.8 of these stacks. And that, my D-Gens, is fantastic. It's way better than freaking shitty swing jazz over here. No shade to swing jazz on stun teams, but on anomaly, no freaking way. Now, here's the caveat, and I don't really like talking about these things, but it would be really weird if I made that recommendation that I just made, knowing what I actually know. So let's put it this way. I want a PS5, and I also have an uncle. And this uncle told me that a PS6 is actually coming very soon. Trust me, bro. And because it is, I should actually hold off on getting the PS5 because the PS6 is looking really good. And when you get the PS6, you're not going to play with the PS5 anymore. And if you don't understand, I guarantee you somebody down in the comments will. That said though, let's start off with her kit, which is, to be honest, really freaking basic. But even though her kit is really basic, there are a lot of things, a lot of decisions that people just aren't considering. Alright, so back to the kit. We've got a 6-stack gauge up here, and every stack represents an off-field attack. So if we switch out and Yuzuha still has the stacks, and we just literally do anything, I'm just going to whack him. Bada bing, bada boom, you see Yuzuha blowing the shit up. And then what you're also going to notice is if you use your EX skill, bada bing, bada boom, and then you go into another character, she is going to then do this sparkly thing, this ticking off-field damage, which I know, it kind of looks like shit. Now, this off-field attack that consumes stacks, it has a cooldown of 8 seconds, which is really freaking long. But let me finish this part first before we talk about that one. And it's that we charge these stacks with pretty much every single big move. EX skill gives you 2 stacks, as you can see over there. Ultimate is also going to give us a bunch of stacks. And then we've got the raccoon flying over. You can see another 2 stacks there. I hope I don't need to prove it to you, but chain attack also gives 1. And then the last one, of course, we have is the parry. And the parry also gives 1 stack. So I'm just going to parry, bada bing, bada boom. You can see I got 1 stack. Holy crap, that is a pro gamer move right there. So the TLDR of Yuzuha is generate stacks. If you have energy, use energy. If you have ultimate, use ultimate. And there pretty much isn't too much in terms of her gameplay. And so whilst we're talking about it, let's quickly cover off her passive skills. And the TLDR of this massive paragraph is 2 things. The first one is use her EX skill or ultimate, you get a massive buff. And this buff has pretty much 100% uptime if you don't freaking screw around. Like, this thing lasts for 40 seconds, but you do need 3000 initial attack, which means you need to see that 3000 on her stat screen over here, just like that, to be able to max out her buff. And so this buff is measured. It does have an indicator. If I come back out, you can see there is this like weird red thing. And if I use my EX skill, you can see it's refreshed. So coming over to effect details, Tanuki Wish, 1.2k attack, 15% damage. Holy shit, that is good for literally everybody. And then we have the other passive, which is TLDR, make your anomaly really strong. I'm not going to cover it off. It's really freaking simple. All right, so I'm going to go back to this 8-second cooldown for Yuzuha's off-field attack, which is that thing right there. So the fact that it's on an 8-second cooldown means that it doesn't actually proc that often. But on the other hand, we actually have a shit ton of ways to charge it. I've been playtesting her for quite a while now, and I've made primarily 2 observations. With a normie build, like with Kaboom as W engine, as well as Swing Jazz or even Astral Voice, she has way too much energy regen. Observation 2 is that she pretty much never runs out of stacks. So as long as you're playing her relatively normally, and I know it's weird to talk about W engines now, but again, most people are going to be running Kaboom, which is great. It's a great baseline, but if you're able to wrangle in Rena's signature, the Weeping Cradle, this is actually such a fantastic pick. Like my degens, just look at this thing. Pen ratio, extra damage, but we've also got some level of energy regen from this passive over here. But it doesn't stop there, it's like a freaking buffet. Next, we've got plus 10% damage, and this thing goes up from 10% up to 20% extra damage. Now, normally, this effect is actually quite hard to maintain because you gotta proc it like every 3 seconds, rah. But if you remember Yuzuha and her random like little ticking thing, that is going to essentially make you maintain a 20% buff with Weeping Cradle. Holy shit. And then of course, lastly, we've got the higher base attack, which is going to help you get that initial 3k attack a little bit easier. Like, don't get me wrong, Kaboom is absolutely fine. It is what most of us are going to use. But if you're able to snag this little crying dude, this thing just synergizes with Yuzuha a little bit too much. I'm just saying. I just wish I picked that one instead of the Collider signature engine. Oh. Alright, so let's come back to the combat. And so I want to talk about next, the off-field ticking. So bada bing, bada boom, you can see, holy crap, Yuzuha going crazy. But this guy over here, 1217, 2293, whatever. Damage kind of dog shit, right? But look at that anomaly build-up. And this thing like goes on forever. It pretty much never stops from the moment you enter battle and use your EX skill with Yuzuha. Now, the way it works, as you can see, it is doing electric damage, and the TLDR of it is that whoever comes after Yuzuha, that element will be what Yuzuha adopts. Assuming, of course, you take the quick assist. So I'm just going to EX skill, and then quick assist with my Yanagi, and as you can see, Homeboy is taking shock damage. So then the question becomes, where exactly should you position your Yuzuha? Could you actually run Yuzuha slot 2, and then so Yuzuha here would inflict burn? So let me just prove that to you. We've got Bernice coming up next. I'm going to EX skill, and then I'm going to quick assist with my Bernice, and Homeboy is on fire. And so yeah, the question becomes, should we actually position Yuzuha in slot 2 to support our sub DPS, or should we always have her in slot 3 to support our main anomaly DPS? Because we could do it like this, right, and get Miyabi more anomaly, or we could swap Yuzuha and Vivian around, and this will get us more of the corruptions, more of the Ether attribute anomaly. And why would we want that? So that we can trigger more disorders. And you know what disorders do? They give Miyabi stacks, but not everything is about Miyabi, and disorders also do damage, of course. So all I'm trying to say here is that you don't have to use Yuzuha for your main DPS. You can definitely consider using her for your sub DPS to get out extra disorders. Alright, so there is one last thing I do need to mention about this ticking thing, and it's that it can't actually proc that attribute anomaly. As you can see, it is stuck on that Ether gauge. So what you have to do is actually, even if you swap into Yuzuha, it doesn't proc. You have to go into the character of which that element is based on. In this case, it's going to be Vivian to then proc all of that crazy shit. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about are the parries. So Clang Clang, that is your classic. We've got the switch parry. But then on top of that, we actually have this really cool umbrella hold a basic attack parry, just like that. And so I'm just going to do it again. As you can see, umbrella out, and bada bing, bada boom, Homeboy is going to take some big beatings. Just like my uncle gave me. Alright, and so the first thing about this parry is that it can actually block red flashes, just like that, or even the ones that don't have red flashes. And that's pretty much exactly the same behavior as Yishan's, Caesar's, Yanagi's, pretty much everyone else's, which is really freaking cool. That said though, my take on this thing is that you hold basic attack, and you can see it actually takes a long ass time for that parry to come out. So it's really hard for it to be a reactive thing. So when it's really telegraphed like this, it's super easy to use, and it's fantastic. That's really good. But that's probably also the only use case, because I tried to do it just then, as you can see. Everyone else's is really reactive, but Yuzuha's is like you have to have a little bit of foresight. Especially in such a fast-paced game where you're constantly trying to time on time with those parries, and just hitting a single button makes it so easy. We've all kind of been trained to hit it on time, not about like 1 second before. And it's really freaking weird. Again, if it's being really telegraphed, just like that. And so you can take advantage of that. Like I'm talking about the motorcycle guy, but also the robot guy who flies down from the sky. You can do that. and you can see we get the parry. It's freaking sick. You feel really awesome. But that is pretty much the only use case that we have for that parry, in my opinion. Unless, of course, you run out of parry points. Just like this, we have 0 parry points, as you can see. And so what you are going to notice is that if you actually use the parry and you don't have parry points, it will still freaking work. And that's really nice because it gives Yuzuha a way to actually regenerate her stacks even if you're out of those points. Which comes back to what I was saying before, which is essentially Yuzuha will never run out of these points. There's always just so many easy ways to get them. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is her Clang Clang, her swap parry, this thing right here, or even like her basic attack parry, like this one right here. And what's happened is that a lot of people have come into her skills, headed over to her skill info, we're looking for the assist. I'm going to click this over here, and they saw this guy over here and they're like, oh my lord, that is big days. We should always parry with Yuzuha. No, you should parry with Yuzuha if you're trying to A, build stun gauge, or B, you're trying to get her stacks so you can have more off-field attacks. There is one last option that everyone forgets about when you use the swap parry, the Clang Clang, and it's that the whole sequence, so watch this, I'm going to use Vivian, and watch the anomaly. Holy crap. It's actually so freaking much. It builds up an incredible amount anomaly, which again will get you that attribute anomaly, the debuff, or it might even get you the disorder. And so what I'm trying to say is that no, it's not always Yuzuha. Yuzuha is not always the right choice. Just remember that proccing that attribute anomaly could get you that extra big spike in damage that you need, especially on assaults. It could absolutely get you that disorder that could end fights that little bit earlier. Or maybe you're trying to squeeze in an extra disorder whilst the enemy is stunned. Just remember, again, Yuzuha is not the only choice. All right, all of that said and done, I do want to come back to discs. I do want to come back to W engines, just to quickly recap because I didn't cover a few things. And the first is TLDR. The most important thing is that you get your 3k attack. And the second most important thing, of course, is to get your anomaly mastery as high as possible, because this guy dictates your second buff. This guy over here dictates your first buff. And so therefore, disc 6 is always anomaly mastery, and your 2-piece set is always Phyphon's melody, because again, anomaly mastery. Disc 5, assuming no signature weapon, is pretty much always going to be attack percentage. And then disc 4, here's where it gets spicy. If you're able to hit that 3k attack and you're like maybe at 3.2 or even 3.3k attack because you're using a 5-star weapon, then you could actually consider going anomaly proficiency on this guy. So I think I actually tried with this one right here. Oh yeah, just like this piece over here, anomaly proficiency to attack. This is on Astral Voice. This is a fantastic piece, but that's pretty much only possible if you get some like crazy god rolls like this one over here. This piece is actually freaking cracked. Too bad it's on the PS5 and not the PS6. And then as for weapons, we did cover the Kaboom being pretty much the baseline. This bad boy pretty much fits into every single support. But I did want to give an honorary mention to this Unfettered Game Ball, which is the Battle Pass support weapon. And yes, it does give energy regen, but all I'm saying is that this guy is just another option. I want to turn your attention to this thing down here. And it's that she gives allies plus 12% crit rate against enemies who are weak to an element. And if you remember, she actually switches her attacks to your main DPS or your sub DPS's element. This thing is pretty much 100% uptime. Now, it's crit rate, and the only character right now that it really benefits is your Miyabi. So you could absolutely consider this one. Now, there is one caveat, and it's that the base attack of this guy, 594, is less than Kaboom, which is at 624. So this might change your 3000 attack, this guy over here. But definitely, again, remember, if you do have Renas, holy crap, it's just busted. Absolutely freaking busted. Otherwise, that's pretty much it for the video. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. Life has been a little bit rough, but here I am. So if I did miss anything, or if you had any extra tech to share, please do let us know down in the comments below, and share the video if you did find it a little bit useful. But otherwise, this is the end of the video. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.